Holy crap, it has been forever since I uploaded a video, and I'm pretty sure this is the longest period I've ever gone without uploading. And I know several people have been sending me notes and leaving comments asking me, if I was okay, what happened. And so I appreciate all that. I appreciate the concern. And in this video, I'm going to lay it all out, what I've been doing, tell you the story of how I was off doing probably the craziest thing I've ever done in my life. Actually, in fact, I'm sure that it's the craziest thing that I've ever done in my life. But before I get to that, my disappearance is actually due to a couple of different reasons. So for starters, several weeks ago, I mentioned on Twitter that my dad was undergoing surgery because he had something pressing up against his spine. And so he went through that surgery, and unfortunately there's been all sorts of complications from that. So I've been spending a lot of time traveling back and forth to the hospital, been trying to help out mom whenever I can. And so that's been a huge factor as far as me kind of disappearing. And he's still in the hospital. It's been going on for close to a month now. But hopefully he's going to turn things around and it's going to get better really soon so I can get back to making videos on a regular basis. But the other reason why I wasn't able to upload in the past week or so was because before all this had happened, I had actually been planning on a trip. And it's a trip that I never in a million years would have dreamed I would be making, because some people like to describe themselves as travelers. They post on their profiles, they want to see the world. I'm not that guy. For me, I am a total homebody. I do like to go hiking and things like that occasionally, but I like to stay close to home. And so I'm perfectly fine. If I want to see the world, I'll just turn on National Geographic and watch TV, and that'll do it for me, I hate traveling, and I really hate flying, because for some reason, it's kind of weird, because years ago, I actually used to want to be a pilot. And then the last couple of years, I've had these reoccurring dreams, several of them, where I'm always in a plane crash. So I thought that was some sort of omen, where it's Dragon, you better stay out of the skies, just keep your feet on the ground. But last year, I met somebody online. And I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, oh my God, Dragon, this is where this is going. But hear me out. So we started talking, and we've been talking ever since the first day we met. And we've been, video chatting sometimes for several hours a day. And what can I say? I fell pretty hard. And the problem was, whenever we first met, she was actually a registered nurse in Saudi Arabia. But her home was in the Philippines. Any way you look at it, that's a really long freaking ways from Tennessee. It's on the other side of the planet. And I'm not one for long distance relationships. And in fact, this was my first. But as Forrest Gump would say, we fit together like peas and carrots. And so she went back to the Philippines, and I've been planning this trip for months to go and see her. Because I just felt like I wasn't going to be happy unless I gave this girl a chance, because we hit it off on every front. Now, I know what you're probably thinking, and it's the same thing that I would be thinking if you were telling me this story. Dragon, this is a horrible, horrible idea. You're going to spend thousands of dollars to fly across the globe for basically a first date with this girl that you've never met before in real life. And on top of that, it's the Philippines. And another reason why I was a bit worried is because she lives in a region where, if you're reading online about this place, a lot of people will say, you don't want to go here, especially if you're a foreigner. Even the U.S. State Department warns people against going to this region because there's been bombings, there's been kidnappings. In fact, less than a month ago, there were 5 college students who were kidnapped in the very city where I was supposed to be going. And so I was a little bit concerned about it, for sure. There was a story not too long ago where a Canadian was kidnapped, had his head chopped off, because there are some people who have claimed allegiance to ISIS in this region. So, yeah, it was a bit concerning. I didn't even tell my parents about a lot of this because I didn't want them to worry. They had enough on their plate. And I also didn't want to make a video before I left, because I didn't really want to broadcast my plans or, make an announcement or anything like that because, again, for security reasons, I didn't want a lot of people knowing that I was going to be in the area. But I figured, you know what? I mean, my life is pretty boring. And so this would definitely be one heck of an adventure. It would be one heck of a story that I would have for the rest of my life. So I got everything together and I boarded a plane and took off for the Philippines. Now, the one thing that I do regret if you're ever going to try to take this route is I went for the cheapest route possible, and I did end up saving a few $100s that I said, I'd put forth towards, a new PC or something like that. But if I had it to do over again, I would try to get one of the most direct flights I could because I spent way too long flying. I flew from Huntsville, Alabama to Atlanta, Georgia, then from Atlanta to Detroit, Michigan, from Detroit to Japan, and then from Japan to Manila. And so then once I got to Manila, then we had to take another flight to her city. So in total, going back and forth, it was like over 40 hours of flying. So if you ever want to be cured of your fear of flying, that'll do it to you, because on the way back home, I didn't think twice about it. And in fact, I don't really, think much about flying now. I don't believe. Like if I had to get on a flight tomorrow, I wouldn't think too much about it. So I guess that's one, positive about flying for 40 hours. So she had flown to Manila to meet me in the airport. And I gotta say, sometimes when meeting somebody that you've been talking to online, it can be a little bit awkward, it can take some time to get, used to and warm up. Thankfully, we hit it off immediately. And it's like we had known each other all of our lives. And so it went better than I could possibly imagine from the moment that we first laid eyes on each other. And so we then ended up jumping on a plane, heading back to her city, which was called Iligan City, which they call the city of the majestic waterfalls. I think there's like 20-something waterfalls here in this city, and it is insane. I saw some of the most beautiful waterfalls I've ever seen in my entire life. And it was like the scenery was like something out of the movies. It was completely unreal. And really the entire country was beautiful. Like the whole scenery and everything, like it was really something like out of the movies. But this is the jungle, so it's hot. I was sweating in places I didn't even know that I could sweat from. And what I thought was a little bit weird was that there was actually a lot of people wearing long sleeves and jackets. And I don't know how in the world they were standing it. I guess they just grown up and so they were used to that. And so maybe if it's like only 90 degrees outside, it still feels cold to them. I don't know, but I was burning up. So one thing that I will say is, reading about some of these places that you might visit one day, it's usually a lot scarier reading about them than it is actually being there. At least that was the experience for me. And you know what? It's probably the same for people who are thinking about visiting the States. They probably, read our media. They see the news stories. They think it's some kind of war zone on our street and people are being, mowed down on a regular basis everywhere you go. And I guess I can totally understand that. But me personally, at least where I live, I don't feel like I'm in any danger like that whatsoever. And so the media kind of has a tendency to exaggerate dangers and crime and things like that. And that's not to say that there aren't real dangers and things like that out there. But I gotta say, during my whole, stay there in the Philippines, I never really felt unsafe in the sense that I felt like I was about to be kidnapped or something like that, which, maybe you don't get that feeling right before it happens. I don't know. But for me, I felt pretty safe the whole time that I was there. And the only thing that really did happen was that I did get a lot of stares. Now, people were looking everywhere I went. So it was like I was, some alien or something. They're like, there's a white boy here. Like, what's he doing here, Which, who can blame them for staring at a handsome hunk of meat walking around here, But I'm just kidding. But, I said I didn't feel unsafe, and I didn't. There were security guards everywhere, which this city that she lives in is actually pretty secure in the sense that they produce most of the power for the entire region, so it's heavily guarded. There's like guard stations everywhere you go. There was, in fact, a guard station probably less than 30 yards from her house. And so there's always somebody there checking on people coming and going, because they do have to make sure that nothing bad happens in that region, because if something does happen, a lot of people are going to be without power. But even though I didn't feel unsafe in the sense that like I was going to be pickpocketed or kidnapped or things like that, I will be honest, there was a period where I literally thought that I was going to die in the jungle. And it was so crazy because nothing like this has ever happened before. And so we had walked down to this waterfall called Tanago Falls. At least I think that's how you pronounce it. Sorry if I totally screwed that up for the locals. But you have to walk down a number of steps in order to get there. And I mean, you've seen me if you follow my Facebook and everything, where I go on hiking trips sometimes. You know, I'm used to the heat. I'm kind of an outdoorsy person. Even though I'm a homebody, I still like to go hiking and things like that. I just like to stay close to home. And so I like to consider myself fairly in decent shape. And so we had walked down to this falls. The falls was absolutely spectacular. We had stayed there for a few minutes, and we were starting to head back up. And I felt completely fine. And then we took a few more steps, and all of a sudden, it just hit me. And I felt like I was about to pass out. Like I became so weak, I had to sit down on a rock, and I wanted to double over. Like I wanted to just put my head between my legs, catch my breath or whatever, because I felt like I really couldn't catch my breath. Jessica's a nurse, though. She wouldn't let me, put my head between my legs. And I know that she, was right in the sense that she made me sit up, even though that felt like the last thing that I wanted to do. I did not want to sit straight up. But she made me sit straight up. But after a few moments, I knew I had my eyes completely wide open. I was looking straight at her, and everything just went completely black. I was totally conscious the whole time, but I couldn't see a thing. And then all of a sudden my hearing started going. Like she was speaking really loud, trying to keep me conscious. And like her voice just kept getting more faint and more faint. And I was very close to just passing out. And so they were sitting there. There was another guy who came up beside us. He started grabbing my hand and rubbing it and trying to, work my arms and everything, get my circulation going. She was working my hand. She actually rubbed a literal hole in my hand, trying to, make sure that I stayed alert and awake and everything else. And I still don't know exactly what happened because, like I said, I felt fine like right before that. So it didn't feel like it was heat. And I'm thinking it could have possibly been my sugar because she had put some candy in my pocket earlier that morning, even though I told her that I didn't want it. Thankfully, she didn't listen to me, and she put it in there anyway. And so she thought about that. She grabbed the candy out of my pocket, shoved it down my throat, and within a few moments after that, everything started coming back. Like my vision started coming back, my hearing, everything else. And so at that point, I didn't feel like I was about to pass out anymore, which is still strange to me because I've never had any sugar problems before. But I was sweating like crazy. She said I turned, like as white as a ghost. And it was scary. Like I really didn't think I was going to make it out of there because we had a long ways to go back up. I had no energy. I was sweating profusely, and we were a long ways from the car. And I mean, there's no emergency vehicles. There's no hospital nearby or anything like that. I mean, we're in the jungle here. But thankfully, everything worked out. There was actually a couple of guys there who helped me out, and I am so thankful for those guys. And so I told them when we got out that I had to take a picture with these guys. Like I always wanted to remember these two guys because they really helped me out whenever I needed it. And you can see from the picture, I mean, it was like somebody poured a bucket of water all over me. And those shorts that I'm wearing, they're like made out of blue jean material. So it's really thick material. That's just how bad I was sweating because it soaked all the way through. And like I said, I wasn't sweating that bad whenever I was coming up, but it just, whenever it hit me and I had that spell, that's whenever like sweat just started pouring out of me like crazy. So it was really scary, but thankfully everything worked out. But everybody that I met was just so great, so nice. Jessica's family took great care of me. They were wonderful people. And one thing that I gotta say is I've always tried to be thankful for everything that I have. And I'm not rich by any means whatsoever. I don't have a whole lot, but I am thankful for what I do have. And in fact, I actually have a lot more than a lot of other people in this world. But one thing that was a bit sad was that this was the first time that I've ever seen real poverty on such a massive scale. And it's like the people there aren't fighting to become rich. They're literally fighting just to survive. Like, just eating every day is a test. To have air conditioning, to have hot water or a shower, this is a luxury that a lot of these folks do not have. And yet these were some of the happiest people that I've ever met. And they were so proud of what they did have, and they took good care of what they had. And one thing that I really loved about Jessica's family is that their whole family was their neighbors. Like, everybody lived right beside each other, so everybody, was coming together. Every time there was a meal, they would laugh, cut up, eat together. And I mean, it was just bonding that should be happening. And then as soon as I stepped back over here in the States, just the look on people's faces, it's just different. I don't know how to explain it, but I just don't think people really appreciate just how good we've got it. And so that was one of the main things that I really took away from this trip. Overall, the trip was absolutely amazing. Definitely an experience that I'm never going to forget, and I would do it again. And in fact, I plan on doing it again, and hopefully the next time that I visit, I'll actually be part of the family, because I've asked Jessica to marry me. She said yes, and so now we're going to begin the process to try to get her a visa to come over here so we can actually be together. And so if you're interested in that, maybe I'll post up some vlog updates and let you know that process and how that's going and everything ever so often. So again, I'm sorry for being a little MIA for a while, but hopefully things are going to pick back up, get back to normal here pretty soon. And I appreciate and thank you all so much for sticking with me, even whenever I disappear like this. And I also appreciate everybody who sent me notes and things like that, making sure that I was okay. It really means a lot to know that people cared. So that does it for me, The Red Dragon. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.